Hello friends, I am here today to start a series of videos where I'm going to tell you what I read in 2024. I didn't do any monthly wrap-ups, so that's what we're going to do now. Today is going to be January's wrap-up. I read a total of 14 books for the month, so let's go ahead and jump into what they were. The first book that I read in January was Always Mine by Laura Pavlov. This is book 1 in her Honey Mountain series. Throughout these videos, you're going to see a lot of Laura Pavlov. I did end up reading, I think, 3 of her backlist series. So, like I said, this is book 1 in her Honey Mountain series. This is a Friends to Lovers. I should have looked up names. I'm terrible with them. Vivian and Nico, like I said, it's a Friends to Lovers, so they have been friends since they were little, and he is kind of like a playboy firefighter type, the very stereotypical small town, like, bad boy, but also good because he, like, is a firefighter. And she is, I want to say she was, like, the chief's daughter. I feel like that was a thing for some reason. Maybe. I don't know if that's this one or if I'm confusing it with something else. But like I said, they've been friends since they were little, and they've always kind of been attracted to each other, but it hasn't really ever, like, the timing hasn't ever really worked out for them. But they find themselves single at the same time, and she asks him to, like, everybody says that she's been in so many relationships, so she doesn't really know, like, what she's looking for. So she asks him to, like, help her find what she's looking for. I did really enjoy this one. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. That is kind of the average rating that I've given Laura Pavlov throughout the series that I've read. Her books are very easy to read. They flow really well. Next up, I continued that series and read Ever Mine, book 2 in the Honey Mountain series. This one is names. I just looked it up too. Hawk and Everly. Hawk. So this one is a second chance. They were together in high school. They broke up right before graduation. Just because kind of they were at different points in their life. He was going off to play hockey and she was going to college. So now she is a sports psychologist, and Hawk's hockey team has hired her to, like, help him, like, figure out his mental stuff to get his game back. But there's kind of a lot of animosity on her end, and she wants to see him do well, but she also, like, doesn't want to, like, be around him. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars. It had all of the things I love in a small town romance, a second chance. It did have that sports element into it, but it's not, like, super heavy into the hockey and the sport and all that. It had that forced proximity because they're sent to work. They're, like, forced to work together. And so, yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. Continuing on a series that I started in 2023, I read The Bully by Sophie Lark. This is book 3 in her Kingmaker series. This one is Dean and Kat. Without spoiling too much, in case you haven't read this series, you definitely need to read book 2 before you read this one. But something happens in book 2 that Kat is involved in, and Dean kind of uses that as a blackmail to get Kat to do basically anything he wants, which ends up going into the sexual favor variety of things. I really love the series. It's like a mafia college boarding school type situation. Like I said, you definitely need to read book 2 before you pick up this one. I loved their dynamic, even though it started out as not a great setup, and I was honestly worried about it. But I did end up giving it 5 stars. Next, I read Rain Me In by Kayla Gross. I think is how you pronounce her name. Please correct me if I'm wrong. This is book 1 in the Cowboys of Nighthawk series. So this one is about Blake and Gavin. Blake, the small town cowboy romance. Blake grew up on a ranch, and after a tragic accident where her brother passed away, she left and, like, hasn't looked back and, like, wouldn't return. But now her mom broke her leg or something. She returns home because her mom is injured somehow, and her family needs help. And on one of her first nights back, she is forced onto a mechanical bull at the local bar by Gavin. He thinks he's being funny, and she is traumatized, basically, from what happened with her brother. Gavin had been her brother's friend, so it's kind of a brother's friend. Unfortunately, the brother's passed away, so he's not, super prevalent. His speaking about him is super prevalent in it, because the book deals a lot with grief and, the process of both of them kind of, moving past what happened to her brother. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. If it had been how do I want to say this? If it had been a fully fiction novel about grief and about loss and moving on and that kind of stuff, I think I would have enjoyed it. I think the spiciness and the romance just kind of gave me a weird, icky feeling. Yeah, I don't think that the topics were blended together well. Spoiler alert for later on in my monthly wrap-ups, I did read the second book, so I did continue on. It didn't, put me off that much. I just wish that it had found a better balance between those topics. Next up, I read Roughing the Kicker by Emily Silver. This one is a friends to lovers football romance. This one is about Jackson and Tinley. Jackson is the kicker for an NFL team, and Tinley is his best friend from childhood. They've grown up together. They've spent, every stage of their life together. And then he is injured in a game and needs somebody to take care of him. And there's kind of a hookup that he had who is kind of inserting himself in as his girlfriend. And in order to not be left alone for that woman to take care of him, he insists that Tinley move in and help him. And so she does, because this is her good friend, and then feelings kind of come to the surface. I gave this one 4 stars. I did really enjoy the forced proximity of it. But this one especially, sometimes friends to lovers, I feel like it's very much a one-sided attraction. And then the other person is just well, I don't want to lose them. Gotta go with it. And I felt that way a little bit about this one. It wasn't, it isn't the most I've ever felt about a friends to lovers, but I did kind of feel that way, so 4 stars. Next, I read book 3 in the Honey Mountain series by Laura Pavlov. This one is Make You Mine. This one is Ashlyn and Jace. Jace is another firefighter. He is a single dad, and in order to, make his schedule work with being a dad, he needs a nanny. So his fire chief kind of offers up one of, I think it's his youngest daughter. I think she's the youngest one. So yeah, she becomes the nanny for his, I think it was 2 or 3 girls. And it's another one of those where the forced proximity brings out the feelings. I'm giving this one 4 stars. I really enjoy a single dad nanny romance. I really enjoy the firefighter aspect of it. Honestly, I wish I had done these wrap-ups sooner, right after I read the books, because a lot of them, I don't remember why I didn't give this one a 5-star, honestly. But yeah, I did end up giving it 4. I also read My Fiance's Bodyguard by Ivy Wild. I love this cover. I picked this up in Vegas. This one is about Max and Madeline. Madeline's dad is kind of this businessman who does things a little bit on the seedier side. I don't think he was quite mafia. But he does kind of put her into this arranged marriage with somebody in the mafia. And Max works for the fiance and is assigned to be her bodyguard and keep her compliant with what the fiance wants and that kind of stuff. And I think she runs away twice. And Max is sent to go get her, and in the process of going to get her, he sees he sees her spunk and sees how much she doesn't want the life that's being given to her. So they kind of come up with a plan to get her out of that life. So yeah, I ended up giving this one 4 stars. It was, I think I wanted it to be a little bit more forbidden. He is the bodyguard, but they kind of got over that a little fast. They didn't really worry about consequences, and it just seemed like things were progressing a little bit too easily for them. So yeah, I wish it had been a little bit rougher, I guess would be the word I'm looking for. Next up, I don't know how I'm going to talk about this one without spoilers, but I read The Spy by Sophie Lark. Again, you cannot read this one if you've not read all of the other Kingmaker series. This is book 4. You need to read 1 through 3 first. You have to, or it won't make sense. So I'm not going to tell you who the characters are in this one. I'm just going to read you the little blurb on the back. I waited 3 long years for this, hiding, lying, spying, waiting like a spider for her to wander into my web. Now she's here and I have to get even closer to her. I'll help her, befriend her, seduce her even. The only thing I can't do is fall in love with her. Her father took everything from me. My money, my family, my life. He has to pay for what he's done, and she's the only thing that can hurt him. So yeah, gave this one 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. Thought that this should have been the end of the series. Which leads me to... I read The Savage by Sophie Lark, book 5 in the Kingmaker series. This one is Sabrina and I forget how to say his name. Adric, maybe? Ish. So yeah, this one is totally unnecessary for the rest of the series. I think book 4 really wrapped it up pretty well. And then we have this extra character who's been in stuff and apparently just needed her own story. It doesn't have anything to do with Kingmakers. She does end up leaving the school and going off to Russia to be a part of this, drug empire thing. I didn't love how the relationship formed. I gave this one 3 stars. It was just kind of pointless to me. I didn't understand why we needed this one. Next up, I read Simply Mine by Laura Pavlov, also in her Honey Mountain series. This one is Charlie and Ledger. Ledger is Charlie's best friend's older brother. If I remember correctly, they kind of had a moment when they were both in high school when he was leaving to go off to college. And then nothing ever came of it. And so now he's back in town and wants to spend time with her, but she's a little bit hesitant, just because of her friend and because of how things played out before. I did end up giving this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed it again. Sometimes I just don't, I don't remember why I didn't give things 5 stars, but I also just think that, it was kind of an in the moment, finish it, this is a 4-star read. I finished the month off with a historical series. First, I read The Heiress Hunt by Joanna Shupe, book 1 in the Fifth Avenue Rebels. This one is Harrison and Maddie. They were friends when they were growing up, and then Harrison ended up leaving. He went to Paris, and now he's come back to New York, and he's realized that his father has bankrupted the family, and he needs a wife. So he really wants to marry Maddie, but she is engaged to a duke, or she's in the process of becoming engaged to a duke. I forget exactly where she was in that relationship. But instead of proposing her, he asks if she will help him find his wife. So she sets up this whole dinner house party weekend thing, and she invites a lot of the single women in their circle, and in the process of finding out what he wants for a wife, he keeps describing her, and she starts off a little bit, she's a little put out, you called me here, you asked me to do this, you're not giving me anything, and then she realizes their feelings for each other. I gave this one 4 stars. Next up, I read The Lady Gets Lucky, also by Joanna Shupe in that same series. This one is Alice and Kit. Kit is best friends with the hero in book 1, and so he's he's at the like weekend house dinner party thing. And he sees Alice there, whose mother is very overbearing. She is singularly focused on finding Alice a husband, but Alice wants a little bit more than just somebody who needs her family's money. And so she kind of approaches Kit and asks him if he will help her become seductive. And so it's kind of that lessons in seduction. It is kind of like a wallflower rake situation. And he helps her, and then when other suitors start looking at her a little bit more openly, he realizes that that's not entirely what he wanted to come from the situation. So yeah, I loved this one. I ended up giving it 5 stars. It had all of my favorite things, basically, in a historical, and so just perfection. Next up was The Bride Goes Rogue, also by Joanna Shupe in that same series. This one's a little more complicated to explain. This one is Preston and Catherine. They are technically engaged to be married, but their fathers arranged the whole thing. And neither of them really want to give in to what their fathers want. But one night, while they're at like a masquerade thing, they end up meeting and not knowing who the other is. Preston figures it out pretty quickly that this woman that he is like intrigued by is the same woman that is supposed to be his fiance. So when he goes to her to try to find out what's going on, hopefully to start up their real relationship, like, she is like not having it at all. She's like, you haven't been around at all. I don't know you and you don't know me. And it kind of comes out of the blue for her. She doesn't know who he is. She doesn't know that he is the one she met at the masquerade for the longest time. So yeah, I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I did really enjoy the intrigue of them not really knowing who that person was and him figuring it out and then her taking longer. I did enjoy that, but I did give it 4 stars. And then I finished the series and read The Duke Gets Even. This one is Nellie and Duke Lockwood. He is the Duke that the heroine in book 1 was supposed to be getting engaged to. And he was kind of thrown aside for the hero in that book. And he's kind of come up in the other 2 books as well, kind of like as a, not really a potential suitor, but just someone for the heroes to look at and be like, well, I can't let her end up with him. So the Duke is looking for a wife. That's kind of what started the whole relationship in book 1 too. But Nellie doesn't want to be married, and she ruined herself, or like publicly, so that she would be able to avoid marriage for the longest time. And so this one had a lot of them trying to figure out where they go from what she wants and what he needs, because money-wise, he needs a wife. And they end up having these like secret meetings, like at the beach, and back in time. They meet because she's supposed to be meeting a lover on the beach, and the Duke shows up instead, and is like, they have a little one night thing, and then he is completely smitten, and she, again, doesn't want anything to do with it because she knows that he wants to get married, and that's not what she wants. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed this whole series. So those are the books that I read in January. If you've read any of these, let me know down below. Again, I wish I had done these sooner because some of them I really feel like I had like pretty strong feelings about when I read them, and I can't remember what they were now. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!